Good morning, guys. Today, I'm going to be giving you a speech about a good friend of mine. He's actually my best friend, and he had a lot of impact on the reason why I started youth ministry, and he got me going in the right direction. He's also the reason I was able to get my first internship at a church. Um, his name is Asher Day, and he's currently the youth pastor at Grace Church at Western and Plains here in Amarillo, Texas. Also, Grace Church has several radio stations throughout the country that uh, are able to get the word out to a lot of people. Uh, First off, I want to just give you a brief uh, explanation slash story of how I met Asher. Whenever I was going to Amarillo College, I moved in with a guy who was an alcoholic, and I had dedicated my life to ministry at a young age, and I knew that I wanted to be a youth pastor. And so I moved in with this guy who was an alcoholic. I didn't know that he was an alcoholic. Uh, as the Bible says, bad company corrupts good morals. So I started drinking and getting into the drinking scene and hanging out with all of his friends because I was new to Amarillo and I'm from a small town and I didn't know anybody. So at one point I got very intoxicated, and I remember the next day I sat down and kneeled before God and just prayed and asked him, hey, bring somebody into my life that can impact me and that can get me to where I don't hang out with these guys anymore, and I don't do this because you've called me to ministry, and that's not how I'm acting right now. I'm acting in a way of the world and not in the way of ministry. And so the next day I'm sitting at Amarillo College. Like I said, I didn't have any friends. And so I was sitting there, and this redheaded kid with freckles came up to me. His name was Brian Richards, and he said, he handed me a flyer, and it said, come to the Baptist Student Ministries and for open mic night. Well, I don't sing, and I sound really dumb if I try to sing. So I told him, I was like, I might come. What is this? Blah, blah, blah. And he kind of started telling me about Baptist Student Ministries, and he told me about the open mic night. I said, I got to work that night, but I'll try to come to one of y'all's worship night, or one of y'all's worship nights. And so I talked to him for a little bit, and then he walked off, and I looked down, and I saw that he didn't have a time or date on the flyer. So I found him, and I kind of made fun of him because that's the kind of person I am. I like to joke with people, and so I told him, hey, you didn't put a timestamp on this, and so I don't know what time to be there. And so we talked for a little bit longer. I say all that to say that he invited me to Baptist Student Ministries. And at Baptist Student Ministries, the first night I went there, I met this guy. He was kind of long-haired, weird, kind of goofy, but everybody seemed to be drawn to him, and everybody seemed to really like him. So I started talking to him a little bit more, and he told me he was a youth pastor at a church, and I was like, oh, cool, that's what I want to be when I grow up, and blah, blah, blah. We talked a little bit, and I was like, you know what? That'd be really cool if I could come to your church sometime. So he he invited me to his church and invited me to help out with his youth group at a Disciple Now. And so I started hanging out at the church. I started doing Disciple Now, and then I became a small group leader at the church. From the small group leader that summer, I became his youth intern, and I was still working full-time. Wasn't a paid internship, but I was able to go to church, kind of get the workings of what a youth pastor kind of sort of does, and get to just understand how that dynamic works, because as a student in a youth ministry, you don't see all the behind the scenes stuff. And so he was working with me on that, as well as learning how to write lessons and how to teach lessons. And so that was in 2010 whenever I met Asher for the first time. And from 2010 to 2013, I worked in his youth group as a small group leader, and on Wednesdays and Sundays, and got to just hang out with him and get to know him more. And as his intern, that's whenever I like to think our friendship really took off, and he became a role model for me. And to this day, he still is a role model for me. I've I've learned a lot from him, and he's taught me how to love students, and that's my big passion. My passion is the youth of today, because they're going to be the adults of tomorrow, and I want to help them grow and be great people in the community. And I believe what the Bible says, that don't let anybody look down on you because you're young. At that point, I was right out of high school. Whenever I got my first youth pastor job, I was 21 years old. I didn't know really what I was doing, but the Lord spoke through me, and the Lord used me, and most importantly, the Lord used Asher. And so, like I said, Asher taught me basically everything I know about ministry. He's advised me in my life. He's officiated my wedding. It was hard to decide between having him as a groomsman and being there, or have him as the officiant, but I respect him enough, and I look up to him enough as my role model, that I decided that I wanted him up there giving the message, giving the lesson, because I knew that even though the wedding day is supposed to be about us, the husband and wife, I wanted it to be about God, and how God is going to grow in my life and in my wife's life. The most important thing that Asher is to me now is a godly friend. He's a friend that's not afraid to tell me, hey, you're being dumb. Hey, stop. He's the guy that I go to. He's the guy that knows literally everything about my life. He knows anything that I have trouble with, I go to him for advice, and he's somebody who gives good advice. He gives godly advice, and I know that without a doubt that he's going to call me out. If I'm not doing the right thing, then he's going to tell me, hey, quit being dumb. So I just wanted to let y'all to know a little bit about my best friend, Asher Day, and just know that the impact he had in my life as a great friend, as a good leader, and as a youth pastor. He's really helped me grow in my life. So I appreciate y'all listening, and I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you.